After awakening the system, Jin Woo began to grow at an absurd rate. But at first, he decided to keep it a secret. To the world, he was still the same low-rank hunter, the one everyone considered useless. But behind this facade, he was evolving, with each battle becoming something completely different. And it was at this point in his journey that he met Hwang Dong-suk. Dong-suk seemed, at first glance, just another experienced hunter willing to lead a raid. He gathered teams to explore C-rank dungeons, promising to split the profits equally among everyone. But there was something dark about him and his group. Deep down, they were part of a type of hunter that terrorized the weak. The so-called lizards. You know what these lizards were? They exploited a cruel loophole in the reality of the dungeons. Since there were no laws or authorities within them, these hunters killed their own allies to avoid sharing the profits. And since the dungeons closed themselves, eliminating all evidence, no one ever found out. A perfect crime. And here I want to ask you, if you were living in this world, would you dare enter a dungeon with people who could betray you at any moment? Or would you rather never risk it and leave the hunter life behind? Comment below, because this is a question many solo-leveling fans have. Well, Jin Woo ended up falling right into Dong-suk's trap. The hunter put him on his team and, mid-raid, when they were already close to the boss, revealed his true intentions. He didn't want to share anything. So he locked Jin Woo inside the boss room, believing he would die quickly. But Dong-suk didn't know that this was no longer the weak Jin Woo he once was. With the help of the system, Jin Woo faced the dungeon, boss alone. It was an intense fight, but he won. And when he turned his eyes to Dong-suk and his team, he showed no mercy. He knew exactly what those hunters were. He knew that if they remained alive, they would kill other innocents. So Jin Woo made a decision. He wiped them all out. And here's another question. Do you agree with Jin Woo's decision to eliminate the lizards without hesitation? Or do you think he should have let the law deal with them, even knowing they would likely get away with it? I want to hear your thoughts, so comment below. But this choice had enormous consequences. Hwang Dong-suk wasn't just any hunter. He was the brother of Hwang Dong-su, an S-rank hunter living in the United States and part of the most powerful guild in the world, Scavenger. When Dong-su learned his brother had been killed, fury overcame him. It didn't matter if Dong-suk was corrupt, cruel, or murderous. To him, the only thing that mattered was revenge. He swore he would find and kill Sung Jin Woo, no matter the cost. Months passed. During this time, Jin Woo continued to grow, exploring increasingly difficult dungeons, accumulating skills, and growing his shadow army. The hunter who had once been seen as the weakest was already attracting the world's attention, until, finally, the inevitable happened. Sung Jin Woo was officially recognized as an S-rank hunter, the youngest in Korea. His fame began to spread, and this drew even more attention to Hwang Dong-su. Then came the invitation. Jin Woo was summoned to participate in an international meeting in the United States, where the world's most powerful hunters would be present. And of course, Dong-su saw this as the perfect opportunity to avenge his brother. But there was an obstacle in his way. Thomas Andre, the leader of Scavenger, the world's #1 hunter, knew that Dong-su was filled with hatred and intended to attack Jin Woo. So, he personally gave an order. Don't touch him. Thomas had realized something. Most still didn't. Jin Woo wasn't a simple rookie. He was dangerous. So dangerous that even Thomas Andre, with all his arrogance and power, knew that facing him wouldn't be easy. And I want you to comment here. Do you think Thomas tried to protect Jin Woo because he truly recognized his power, or because he wanted to avoid a scandal that could involve the Scavenger Guild? But Dong-su didn't heed his leader's orders. Blinded by rage, he decided to act on his own. And what did he do? He kidnapped Jinho, Jin Woo's most loyal partner, the friend who had been with him from the beginning. Even when everyone despised him, the torture was cruel. Dong-su wanted Jinho to reveal details about the dungeon where his brother had died. But despite being beaten relentlessly, Jinho didn't give in. He remained steadfast, proving his loyalty to Jin Woo. However, Dong-su hadn't counted on one detail. Wherever he was, Jin Woo always left his shadows to watch. And it only took one of them finding the kidnapping site for the hunter's fury to be awakened. When Jin Woo arrived and saw Jinho's near-death state, something inside him snapped. His rage was so intense that his magical energy spread for miles. Even Thomas Andre, from a distance, felt that monstrous power growing. And it was at that moment that fate placed Jin Woo and Thomas on the same path. Jinho. That name may seem small compared to the grandeur of Sung Jin Woo and the national-ranked hunters, but for the protagonist, Jinho was always more than just a partner. He was the first true friend who believed in him, the first who didn't look at Jin Woo with contempt or pity. From the beginning, Jinho was there, offering help, even when he had nothing to gain from it. While everyone saw Jin Woo as dead weight, Jinho saw something different. He believed. And this friendship was built dungeon after dungeon, risk after risk. That's why, when Dong Su decided to kidnap Jinho, he didn't just touch an ally, he touched Jin Woo's heart. Dong Su didn't just want revenge. He wanted to humiliate Jin Woo. He knew he couldn't face him head-on, so he targeted the one Jin Woo valued most. And it was cruel. He tortured Jinho mercilessly, trying to extract information from him about the dungeon where his brother had died. Imagine the scene. Jinho tied up, covered in blood, his body covered in bruises, and Dong Su laughing, saying he only needed one word. All he had to do was confess and it would all be over. But Jinho didn't give in. Not for a second. His answer was simple and direct. Go to hell, and here I want you to comment. Would you be able to endure the pain and protect your friend until the end, as Jinho did? Or do you think that, in the hour of suffering, you might have given in? This is a heavy thought, and I want to know what you would have done in his place. Meanwhile, far away, Jin Woo's shadows were on alert. One of them found the place where Jinho was being held, and immediately warned his master. It was at that moment that the mood changed. Jin Woo's magical energy exploded in a way few in the world had ever felt. It was as if the air itself had grown, heavier. His rage was so intense it traveled miles, reaching every hunter nearby. Even Thomas Andre, standing far away, felt it. The world's #1 hunter stopped and thought, this energy isn't normal. He knew immediately that Dong Su had disobeyed his orders, and, even more so, that he had messed with the wrong person. Jin Woo wasted no time. He used his shadow-shifting ability, appearing on the spot in a flash. The scene he encountered was brutal. Jinho nearly dead, thrown to the ground, and Dong Su, laughing, relishing the torture. In that instant, Jin Woo didn't just see an enemy. He saw a monster, and his fury was so overwhelming that even his own shadows began to tremble with his emotion. Dong Su tried to react, but it was useless. Jin Woo appeared before him in a flash and, without hesitation, struck him with a force that knocked him away. The impact shook the ground. He then rushed to Jinho and tried to use a healing potion, but it didn't work. His friend's condition was so critical that even the potion's magic failed. Desperate, Jin Woo turned to Dong Su's henchmen and ordered them to heal Jinho immediately. One of them, angrily, said he would only do so under his boss's orders. That was their final mistake. In the blink of an eye, Jin Woo knocked them down, leaving them unconscious on the ground. And then, looking at Dong Su, who was still trying to get up, Jin Woo made it clear. If you want answers, ask your brother directly. In hell. Do you realize the weight of that sentence? It was the moment Jin Woo showed he no longer had patience for games, that there was no room for compassion when someone touched the one he loved. Dong Su tried to fight, but it was useless. Every blow Jin Woo delivered was devastating. He threw him against the walls, slammed his head into the ground, and crushed his will to fight. The S-rank hunter, who thought himself invincible, was reduced to nothing, and it was at that very moment, as Jin Woo unleashed all his fury, that Thomas Andre arrived on the scene. He had rushed over when he sensed that absurd energy, but it was too late. Dong Su was finished. Thomas tried to intervene, begging Jin Woo to stop. But Jin Woo didn't stop. His gaze was fixed, his anger still burning, and it was at that moment that the inevitable happened. The confrontation between Sung Jin Woo and the world's #1 hunter was about to begin. The silence after Dong Su's defeat was heavy. The body lay on the ground, the henchman unconscious, and Jinho still struggling between life and death. The room seemed frozen in time. But then, The sound of firm footsteps echoed in the air. It was Thomas Andre, the man who held the title of strongest hunter on the planet, leader of the Scavenger Guild, #1 in the world rankings. His presence alone was enough to crush any room. His immense muscular body, covered in a golden aura of power, seemed like an insurmountable wall. He looked at the fallen Dong Su and then at Jin Woo. There was seriousness in his gaze, but also something rare. Respect. Thomas knew he was facing someone who could not be underestimated. "Let him go," he said, referring to Dong Su. "Let's forget what happened here." But Jin Woo didn't back down. He simply looked into the eyes of the most powerful man in the world and replied coldly, "What if I don't want to?" These words cut through the air like a blade. The silence was broken. Thomas frowned as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. He was Thomas Andre, #1, the human monster. How many in the world would have the courage to face him head-on? Few, or perhaps none. But there was Sung Jin Woo, challenging him without hesitation. And here, I want to know. If you were in Jin Woo's shoes, would you have the courage to face Thomas Andre, even knowing his reputation, or would you try to retreat to avoid a suicidal fight? Tell me. I want to see how many of you would choose to fight, and how many would choose to survive. Thomas took a step forward. His aura began to expand. The muscles in his body grew even larger, as if every fiber were being forged into steel. The pressure emanating from him was absurd, crushing. It was as if the very atmosphere bowed before his presence. But Jin Woo wasn't intimidated. On the contrary, a small smile appeared on his face. He ordered his shadows to take Jinho to the hospital immediately. Only then did he turn his gaze fully to Thomas. "Now," Jin Woo said, "let's fight." The first impact was brutal. Jin Woo advanced with absurd speed, so fast he seemed to disappear. His dagger sliced through the air and struck Thomas's chest. But to his surprise, the blade didn't leave a scratch. It was as if he'd attacked a mountain of iron. Thomas smiled. A smile of pure confidence, almost contemptuous. "Is that all?" He then counterattacked with a punch, a simple, direct blow, but with enough force to destroy an entire reinforced concrete wall. Jin Woo barely had time to react. He leaped to the side, and the punch pierced the ground, creating a crater. The fight had truly begun. And I want you to think about this. Who do you think would have the upper hand in a direct, brute force combat without tricks or skills? Jin Woo with his absurd speed, or Thomas Andre with his monstrous strength? Leave your opinion in the comments, because this is a never-ending debate among fans. With every move, the battle seemed to shake the city. Jin Woo used his speed to attack, from unexpected angles, appearing behind Thomas, striking his ribs, trying to find openings. But Thomas was like a tank. No blow seemed to penetrate his absurd defense. Until Jin Woo decided to change strategy. He activated his telekinesis, pinning Thomas to the ground for a moment. It was at that moment that he managed to land a punch on the giant's neck, drawing blood for the first time. And here the narrative takes a turn. Thomas, who until then seemed unshaken, was surprised. A cut, a wound, something almost no one had managed to inflict. He realized, in that instant, that Jin Woo wasn't just any mage, he was a monster. "Interesting," Thomas murmured. "Finally someone who can entertain me." And then, he unleashed his true form. Golden armor began to grow around his body, covering him from head to toe. It was as if a titan had descended to earth. His eyes glowed with energy, and every movement made the ground tremble. He slammed his hands into the ground, and an explosion of power spread across the battlefield, sending debris flying in every direction. The impact was so strong that even the most distant hunters felt it. But Jin Woo retreated just enough to avoid the blow. His eyes were fixed, his resolve unbreakable. He knew he couldn't beat Thomas with brute force, but he also knew he didn't need it. The fight intensified. Thomas created spheres of energy that sucked in everything around them, like mini black holes, while Jin Woo used his shadows to confuse and distract. It was like watching two gods collide, each blow carrying enough power to destroy any common enemy in a single instant. So let me ask you, if this fight were adapted into a film, would you like to see it more realistic, full of brutality, or more stylized with grandiose, cinematic effects? I really want to know how you imagine this battle on screen. With each exchange, Thomas seemed more irritated. Jin Woo, in turn, grew bolder. In a surprising moment, Jin Woo leaped, stomped on Thomas's own head, and used the momentum to land a knee that cracked the golden armor. It was an unthinkable feat. The audience of hunters watching around them couldn't believe their eyes. The world number one was bleeding. Thomas roared, shouting his name as if it were a reminder to the universe. I'm Thomas Andre, but Jin Woo, cold as ever, replied, and I already told you I don't care. And then he charged again, unleashing a barrage of punches that gradually destroyed the toughest armor ever seen. The fight was reaching its climax. The clash between Jin Woo and Thomas Andre felt like something out of a nightmare. It wasn't just a fight between hunters. It was the clash of two titans, two monsters that surpassed all human limits. Every blow was an explosion. Every defense, an earthquake. The ground around them was already unrecognizable. Chunks of concrete flew, craters opened with each impact, and even the nearby buildings began to buckle under the absurd pressure of the battle. Thomas, covered in his golden armor, advanced like an unstoppable colossus. His punches were like divine hammer blows, each carrying enough force to shatter a mountain. But Jin Woo was no easy prey. He moved like a living shadow, dodging, reappearing behind Thomas, striking with precision. In one of the most intense moments, Thomas managed to grab Jin Woo with his telekinesis, crushing him to the ground. The pressure was so great that cracks spread in all directions, as if the world were about to shatter. But Jin Woo didn't let himself be trapped. He activated his own telekinesis, not only to free himself, but to pull Thomas in at the same time. The two powers collided, creating a shockwave that threw all the surrounding hunters away. And here's a question for you. If you had the ability to telekinesis in a fight like this, would you use it offensively, crushing the enemy, or strategically, manipulating the environment to your advantage? I want to know how you would use this power. Suddenly, Jin Woo managed to turn the tables. He pulled Thomas with incredible force, bringing him close, and drove his knee into the giant's face. The impact was so brutal that part of the golden armor shattered, revealing blood streaming from Thomas's mouth. The hunters watching the fight were shocked. It was impossible to believe what they were seeing. Thomas Andre, the indestructible, the symbol of human strength, was bleeding. Thomas roared furiously. His voice echoed like thunder. I'm Thomas Andre! It was more than a shout. It was the wounded pride of someone who had always been at the top, who had never been defeated, who had never had to kneel before anyone. But Jin Woo was unfazed. He simply replied, cold and relentless. I told you. I don't care. And then, he unleashed a barrage of insane blows, punches, elbows, kicks, all at superhuman speed. It was as if time itself couldn't keep up. Each impact shattered more of his armor, each strike bringing Thomas closer to defeat. The ground shook as Jin Woo slammed him into a wall, shattering it into thousands of pieces. Then he launched himself at the number one hunter and began smashing, his face into the ground, blow after blow, leaving no room for reaction. Thomas's bones shattered. The sound was terrifying, and yet he still tried to resist. And here's another question for you to discuss. Do you think Thomas kept fighting out of pride, to prove he was still number one, or because he truly believed he could win the fight? I want to hear your opinion, because this is a point that divides many fans. Thomas tried to counterattack once more, unleashing a wave of absurd energy. But Jin Woo was already ahead. He blocked, dodged, and counterattacked with a force that brought the giant to his knees. It was a historic moment. For the first time, Thomas Andre, the strongest hunter in the world, was being forced to kneel before another man. And then, breathing heavily, covered in blood, and with his armor destroyed, Thomas finally admitted, "Enough. I've lost." These words echoed like thunder. The surrounding hunters could hardly believe what they were hearing. Number one had been defeated. Jin Woo, for his part, said nothing. He simply stood up, turned his back, and left the battlefield. For him, there was no pride in defeating Thomas. There was no need for boasting. He simply moved forward. And that was the moment the whole world realized. A new king had arisen.